what can different registries offer. So we're going to do a tour around European and other registries further afield. This will be ably guided by Matthieu de Varax, who will be guiding us through the maze. So Matthieu, I think, is just coming up onto the screen, and I will pass over to him shortly. Hi, Matthieu, how are you? Oh, we need to unmute you. So that's it. If you can just turn your microphone on,
yep.
That's great. So Matthieu, I'm going to pass over to you to talk about what can different registries offer, a view of registries in Europe and further afield. And I'll let you introduce your panelists. And thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Lorna. Thank you. Just a few words to introduce our panelists here. Len Cormier, to start with. Len is a safety oversight consultant for the Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority and also provides technical support to the Bermuda Aircraft Registry. Prior to working in Bermuda, Len was engaged in the International Civil Aviation Organization, the ICAO, for 14 years as a chief technical advisor in the Asia-Pacific region. Another thing which is worth noting is that Len is a pilot, which I think will bring very interesting insight into this panel discussion. Turning to Martina Flitsch. Martina is a partner with Weisenheimer Legal in Vienna, Austria. And she focuses on aviation and corporate matters. She acquired her experience in aviation as in-house counsel and subsequently head of legal at Austrian Airlines. And she advises airlines, business jet operators, lenders, and aircraft owners. And she obviously has vast experience of registering and deregistering aircraft from the Austrian register. And she's also a member of the European Business Aviation Association. Katrina Bella, she's right there on the screen. Katrina is a senior associate with GVZH in Malta, a law firm. Her main areas of focus are maritime law and aviation law. She's assisted clients in acquiring a Maltese AOC and has advised operators and owners in acquisition transactions and the regulation of custom and VAT issues. She serves as Secretary General of the Malta Business Aviation Association and sits on the advocacy committee of the EBAA, which I've just mentioned. And then Stephen Quayle. Stephen is a director with Keynes, the leading independent Isle of Man law firm, so he's based in the Isle of Man. He leads the firm's aviation practice and regularly advises clients in connection with Isle of Man business jet sale and purchase transactions, and other aspects, including registration, insolvency, and aircraft repossession. And Stephen is a regular speaker at leading industry events, both in the Isle of Man and internationally. So, as you can see here from this panel, we have a very diverse panel with representing registries or jurisdictions in various parts of the world, not just in Europe, but also outside Europe. That's true of Len, of course, and that will soon be true of your jurisdiction, Stephen. With Brexit coming up, we'll have the opportunity to say a word about this. So without further ado, first topic on the agenda: how can registries influence buyers and owners' decision to buy an aircraft? Well, there are various types of registries that we will discuss here. Some register ownership, some register the operator, and they have various features. So how does it, make a difference? How does it influence a buyer, an owner, a financer's decision to buy an aircraft or to move an aircraft around in these various registries? Now, since this is, the Malta Business Aviation Conference, I think it's only fair that we start with you, Katrina. I'd like to ask you, why would you say owners and financiers favor the Malta registry, which is well known as a very popular registry?
Yes, definitely. I think in the past years, Malta has seen an exponential growth in our registry. And I believe it's a number of different aspects that have led to the success of the registry. The first being, I believe, is that we are full EU member states and the language. So there are two official languages in Malta. There's Maltese that only the Maltese can understand, and then everything else is in English as well. So all our laws, all our regulations, even if you had to go on government websites, everything is in English. All documents issued by the registry are also in English, actually, predominantly. Court proceedings can be in English if requested. So this facilitates people from all over having legal counsel, head of legal in different countries and all of that. It allows us all to communicate much better with each other, I must say, and it helps. There's also, I believe, the legal infrastructure that undertook an overhaul in the past 13 years. Basically, there was a review of the laws, and I believe they did quite a good job because they actually logged at the laws of all the other jurisdictions, picked and chose all the bad parts were left out, obviously, and they took on all the good parts, the majority of the good parts, and consolidated them into one legal framework. This has helped a lot because it's really ironed out a lot of the issues that maybe other jurisdictions could have had. Then there's also the accession, obviously, Cape Town, that gave us the fact that we're party to that. It gave us kind of a uniformity with a number of other jurisdictions.
Okay, I should have started with this. Katrina, does the Malta registry register ownership or operators of both?
So basically, it's an operators registry, particularly.
Right.
The details of the owners are noted and can be recorded, but it is an operators registry.
Okay, okay, excellent. Katrina, turning to you, what's the position in Austria? What's the main characteristics of the registry out there? To Martina, sorry, you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Katrina, Martina sound a bit similar.
It's a bit confusing.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Good afternoon to everyone from Vienna. Yes, I have to say I've been dealing with aircraft registrations now for many years, and in my opinion, or in my experience, Austria is still a rather attractive place for business aviation. And this is mainly due to the quite flexible and supportive aircraft registry that we have here. At the moment, we have about 200 business jets registered, and there are about 40 operators doing business here. So for such a small country like Austria, it's quite an impressive number. So, but what are the advantages from my experience? I think the key advantage is, what I try to promote all the time, is that Austria really seeks to be an attractive location for business aviation. And I can underline all the time that really the people working there in the registry are quite flexible, and they really try to ensure that all the work is done in a very informal way. Another aspect is Austria is an operator registry. This means that the aircraft will be registered in the name of the operator, but also the owner plays a specific role there. So the operator cannot do anything without having the consent of the owner when registering or deregistering the aircraft. So his signature is all the time required. And it appears that many investors, they seem to trust the Austrian authorities. Yeah, that might also be an aspect. A further aspect that I note from time to time is the fee aspect. So in my opinion, the Austrian fees are in the lower middle range, and this might also play a role for operators and for owners. One other aspect that I consider as quite important is the willingness and the willingness of the Austro Control to conclude Article 83 agreements with other countries. So they're really quite flexible, and whenever there's a need to conclude such an agreement, they are supportive, and they try to assist and find such an agreement with the other authorities. At the moment, we have 7 such Article 83 peace agreements in place. And the final aspect that we should not forget is that Austria is an EASA member state, so this also brings some kind of advantages if you're doing commercial business aviation in Europe. A final point, but that what I would like to mention is not a positive, but it's a negative point, at least according to my experience. And this is the point that you cannot register pledges in Austria. So I was often confronted with aircraft transactions financing, and everything was already prepared, and then it turned out that the pledges could not be registered, and this changed the whole game, and either the banks or the financing institutions had to change their financing structure into a leasing finance or a conditional sale agreement, or they had to go to another jurisdiction. Yeah, so these are the main pros and cons.
It's interesting you conclude on this, Matthieu, because I was going to ask you precisely, because Austria is known, obviously, as not having a proper mortgage registry like some other jurisdictions in Europe. But still, there are quite, as you mentioned, a great number of business jets out there and big ones. And, I suspect a great number of these aircraft are financed. So that's, as you've mentioned, the Austrian lawyers and industry has had to adapt to this, but that doesn't seem to have proven, a major obstacle to the registration of aircraft, business jets, I mean, and finance ones in Austria. Is that right?
That's right, and that's also my impression. So the financing banks changed the structure then, and they are offering lease financings or these conditional sales agreements. And sometimes, if they're very good clients, they also do a kind of loan financing. And the fact that pledges cannot be registered does not mean that they cannot be created. So of course they can be made. That's not the problem, but it's well, you can. They're made in a different way, so without registration, and sure. If so, they do not. This structure does not offer the same security that you have, but of course you can create pledges.
I think Belgium is another jurisdiction in Europe which has the same issue as Austria with no aircraft mortgage registry. However, they've come around the issue like you guys and changed the law recently to allow not mortgages but form of pledge. Len, turning to you, you won, representing one of these registries far away in the West from Europe, but still, I understand that there's quite a great number of business jet aircraft that are operated and based in Europe that are registered in Bermuda. Why is that, and what would attract owners to Bermuda then?
Thank you, Matthieu, and thank you for the opportunity to participate today. Like you say, Bermuda, we are way off in the Atlantic, very close to the United States. I think I should also highlight that Bermuda has 900 aircraft on the registry approximately. Obviously, we're very large number of aircraft on Article 83 bis, especially in the Russian Federation. So majority of those aircraft, about over 700, are on Article 83 bis. But that's not into the business world, although Article 83 bis can be used by corporate private aviation as well, but generally it's not been done. It's been focused on the commercial airlines. So yes, we do have aircraft, private aircraft. I think we have almost 100, and we have 32 of those aircraft are actually based in Europe. There are a number of reasons. First of all, I think on the safety side, I think it's recognized that all the registries basically have a high level of safety, or I should say the operators have the high level of safety for which we do oversight of. I think so. Differentiation could be price for one reason. There's a number of registries that have a higher price. And we've recognized that, and we've lowered our price 40% about 3 months ago, recognizing COVID. And I think in some of the previous panels, there was some discussion that even the billionaires are sharpening their pencils and wanting to save some money. I think also was was mentioned about the service challenges in the Russian Federation. And that's not uncommon with some regulators, and what the offshore registries offer is perhaps a high level of standard, because we can hire people. If we have more aircraft in our registry, we just go out and hire some more inspectors. So we provide a very quick service, and there's almost a competition in the registries to see who can do the quickest service. And it doesn't mean we're cutting corners. It means that you have inspectors ready to proceed on short notice to do inspections, and that's worked very well. So, and also service in that, I think with COVID, an important aspect has been where your inspector's based. We're very fortunate in that Bermuda is off the beaten path, but we have a major office in Farnborough in the UK. Also in Moscow, we have a very large office. We have one in Shanghai, but I don't think that's of too much interest to this forum. And of course, we have designated inspectors that are based throughout Europe. I think Cape Town, having Cape Town is question, I guess, later on as to how much it's being used or what's the benefit. Bermuda, we've had a mortgage register for 15 years. So that's been very important to our stakeholders. We have a lot of leasing company aircraft, and they register their mortgages, and that protects their interests. So I think there's a variety of reasons why stakeholders have chosen a Bermuda registry. And I think there's, from the stakeholders' perspective, there's a lot of competition with private registries. So again, that's a benefit to the clients, because they can choose the registry that best suits their needs. Thank you.
Competition seems to be a recurring theme here. We'll come on to that in a moment. And about cost, I found interesting that some of you have mentioned cost as being one of the drivers to get owners, to register aircraft in your jurisdiction. Perhaps I should say a word to the French CAA, because the cost of registering an aircraft, I'm talking about the legal paperwork here, not the technical stuff, but the cost of registering an aircraft in France is nominal. I mean, it's pretty much nothing. So there's room for perhaps increasing the fees of the French registration. Turning to you, Stephen, in the Isle of Man, the Isle of Man registry, is known for its, its efficiency and the speediness at which it operates, but also it's quite outside the EASA sort of sphere, and of course there's Brexit coming up. So what would you say are the main reasons for selecting the Isle of Man registry these days?
I suppose it might be as quick to say what we're not based on the other panelists and some of the characteristics. We don't do AOCs, so Isle of Man aircraft are not offered for charter. We are not an EASA register, and we don't do 83 biz. But almost in spite of that, since 2007, when the registry opened, we've registered nearly 1,100 aircraft, the majority of which are business jets. I think the current figures are just under 400 for active business jet registrations. What the island did well was it saw a gap in the market for what was out there, and we took the legal architecture from the UK system, replicated it, like Malta tried to improve what we have. So we have contract. Just to be clear actually to the audience, the Isle of Man is a crown dependency. The Queen's our head of state, but we have our own laws and parliament. What this means is our legal system is very closely aligned to the UK, and English law especially. So things like contract law, most issues with regards to mortgage security, it's very similar. So we felt from the start there was a level of stability for clients. But what the island recognised was that there was a need for more registers that brought high safety standards and regulatory standards, but with a high level of service, with commercial levels of service. The mantra as it stands is safety with service. We're not a jurisdiction where we're looking to save in any way or make it easier in terms of the safety aspects, but in terms of filing of documents, in terms of mortgage registrations, in terms of costs, we've tried to set a best standard. Len mentions Cape Town. We would have ratified Cape Town earlier than we could, but because we had to wait for the UK to ratify it, it took us until January 2018. We recognise financiers' interest. We're keen to protect those, to follow through that commitment on enforcements. But it's worked, frankly. Maybe if we tried the same model in 20 years' time, the world would be a different place. But when we opened the register in 2007, we found for, I think, nearly a decade, we took on about 100 business jets per year.
Right, very interesting. And Stephen, on the safety side, I think the Isle of Man registry sits behind, you know, so to speak, EASA and FAA, and you know, to transfer an aircraft from your registry to the FAA or to EASA, I mean to EASA registry, is fairly straightforward. It's fairly easy, isn't it?
I suppose the starting point is, because we're not an EASA register, we can take on FAA type design aircraft, FAA certification. We can validate pilots' licenses issued by FAA, Transport Canada, and others. We don't have the same system as EASA with regards to EASA Part M and the airworthiness review certificates. But generally, the Isle of Man, if you want to bring an aircraft onto the register, we would want to survey the aircraft, we would want deregistration, and if the aircraft's to leave the register, it will depend on the new registry what they want. Historically, an aircraft moving from the island to the FAA, for example, historically FAA DRs would want an export certificate of airworthiness, but we found in recent years that if it's a US type design aircraft, they typically don't ask for an export certificate of airworthiness. So we find it relatively easy. And I think I might be jumping ahead to a question later, but in terms of marketing of aircraft or remarketing, we find it's fairly simple to get the aircraft on the Isle of Man to sell. And if the potential purchase is in the US, again, it's a relatively straightforward process, a quick and straightforward process to move to the US.
Good, excellent. I can't avoid asking the question, Stephen, I'm sorry about this, but we're only 30 days away from the actual Brexit, which is the actual exit of the United Kingdom, of which the Isle of Man is a part, from the EU. How is that going to affect registration of business jets in the Isle of Man?
From a regulatory perspective, because we're not part of EASA, there should be absolutely no change whatsoever in terms of how the registry's role is performed, and its position as a safety regulator. The tax side is a little bit, I see it as a good thing. Let me just explain why, because I'm conscious that there's probably been various stories of doom regarding to Brexit. Registering an aircraft in the Isle of Man does not bring you any tax benefit. There's no VAT saving naturally or customs saving. It's disconnected. And likewise, if somebody imports their aircraft at the moment through the Isle of Man into the EU, they're not required to register the aircraft in the Isle of Man. So, with one exception, they're two distinct. They're two distinct sectors, really. The one difference, or the one point where there's overlap, is temporary admission, and up to now, an Isle of Man registered aircraft couldn't rely on temporary admission when flying in the EU. The reason for that is that the Isle of Man is seen as part of the EU customs area, and by being Manx registered, the aircraft will be seen as an EU registered aircraft. When we leave the UK customs area at the end of the year, that obstacle will be removed. We try to be a global register. We've got aircraft that are based in North America, East Asia, South America. If they want to fly into the EU, with a Manx registration they need to import. From the end of this year, that won't be an issue. So in our view, there's a silver lining to Brexit from a registry perspective, and it could make us more attractive to owners outside the EU.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much for this. Let's move on to the next topic, which is Cape Town. So some of you have mentioned the Cape Town Convention. I know it's it's debatable whether Cape Town registration is required or not, what benefit it brings. But still, a number of jurisdictions in Europe have ratified the Cape Town Convention. not all of them, which is interesting. So sort of, some European jurisdictions seems to be leading the way. And on this panel, I know that Bermuda and the Isle of Man have registered, and of course Malta have registered the Cape Town Convention. Austria has not. So why don't we do a sort of a quick poll among you and see, discuss with you what you think. Why do you think Cape Town ratification makes a difference? Len, do you want to start? So Len, you're on mute.
Yes,
good,
okay,
good.
there you go. Well, it has made a difference. How big a difference, I'm not sure. The aircraft that are registered in Bermuda, and we have about 80 aircraft that are registered every year. Not all of them, the mortgagee, again, where there's leasing involved and financing involved, they don't all register with the Cape Town. And they don't always register on our mortgage register. Sometimes they do both. So why they don't, there's not a large cost, I don't think, to registering an IDERA and applying Cape Town. But I think it's important that you have it, because if the client feels that they have need of it, it's available from the Bermuda perspective. There's 80 states, only 80 states have ratified Cape Town. So maybe that's an issue as well. There's 193 KO member states. Mm-hmm. So it's still not even half that have ratified the agreement, which does impact if your aircraft has difficulty in a country that hasn't ratified Cape Town, could be more challenging.
I see, and also there's this difference between, where the debtor, that is the borrower, for example, is incorporated, whether it's in a ratifying state, or whether the registry itself has ratified Cape Town, which Katrina is the case of Malta. Would you say that Malta's ratification of Cape Town has helped, the financing of these aircraft and the registration in Malta?
I believe so, yes. I think, at least from what I've seen, when an aircraft is financed, let's say 70% of aircraft that are financed that I have seen, so it's a personal opinion of mine, yes, we do have to, usually we are obliged to also register the securities on the international register, as well as making use of the IDERAs and the securities that Cape Town gave us, which were in securities that our laws envisaged in the beginning. So Cape Town allowed Malta to be on kind of a level playing field when it comes to financing of aircrafts. I personally do believe that it made a very big difference for the jurisdiction and making Malta an attractive jurisdiction and a secure jurisdiction for banks to finance. I do believe personally that it's reduced costs as well and efficiencies, because, well, I'm sure most of us know that I tend to like the international registry. I think it's quite an efficient system that we have.
Sure. And I think the IDERA, which is the deal registration power attorney, is a key driver in this. Martina, I'm obviously conscious that Austria has not ratified, not even signed the Cape Town Convention. Does it, do any bad to the Austrian registry? It doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, is it an impediment?
I don't really know, because Cape Town is not an issue here in Austria, and apparently there was no one who pushed the government to sign this in the past. What I just see is that the Austrian banks are quite reluctant, and they don't like this Cape Town convention so much. On the one hand, because it's quite a complex system, and it's not so clear not so easy to understand how Cape Town works parallel to the Austrian legal system. And on the other hand, the banks are quite fine with the situation as it is, and they feel if this would be ratified in Austria, then perhaps more international banks and international financing institutions would come to the Austrian market, and this could have an impact on their position. So from that, I would say yes, Cape Town has an impact so far, the fact that it was not ratified. But apparently there's nobody who wants to change this situation, and so, well, everything is fine with
right. Well,
yes,
good,
yeah.
good. Okay, there seems to be some balanced views here as to the use of Cape Town, and that's normal. You know, some jurisdictions have ratified, some have not. Conscious of time, moving on to the next topic, which is whether there's a need for harmonization across registries in Europe. Now, this is a question really more than trying to bring an answer. I just wanted to briefly discuss with you guys the fact that whilst safety, as we've discussed, is regulated, in a single way through the EASA zone. On the other hand, when registering an aircraft, the conditions and the requirements can be quite different from one jurisdiction to another, and it could be relatively quick and easy in one jurisdiction and relatively cumbersome and difficult in some others. So the question is whether it might make sense in the future, and I mean the long future, because it's a long prospect here, to try and seek to harmonize the rules and the requirements to register an aircraft. Again, taking the example of one well-known operator, Aviation, who recently received was awarded a single EASA AOC. Why shouldn't it be possible to register an aircraft in one single European registry? Now, against that background, I've mentioned competition earlier on. Registries, like their industries, like their countries within Europe, are competing against each other, and I appreciate it's not an easygoing topic. But Martina, do you have experience of registering aircraft not just in Austria but in other jurisdictions? And would you say, would you share this view that there are differences in requirements among European jurisdictions?
Yes, exactly. There are many differences, and I fully understand that if you deal with the registries which are more complex and more bureaucratic, that there is a need or a need to find a harmonization in Europe. But talking again from an Austrian perspective, I think it's fine if we leave it as it is, because we benefit from a very competitive register here. And so from this point of view, I don't see a need to change anything. And also taking into account that I'm a legal advisor, and for us it's a good business that we have all these different systems. So yeah, we have a field where can we do business. So from this perspective, I'm quite fine, and I don't see a need for harmonization. But what I would like to mention, what I see is there would be a need for harmonization in terms of or in view of some forms that are used. For example, what I experience is that it's quite complicated if every registry has its own forms, for example, for the deregistration of an aircraft. And I noted that it would be helpful if, for example, the last registered owner would be stated on each such document. This could help or facilitate the transfer of aircraft from one to each other. So there would be a change so that we could harmonize some things, but there's no need to fully harmonize everything in Europe.
And not too quickly. Okay.
Not too quickly, yeah.
I can see, the smiles on your faces, which seem to suggest that you all agree. One last topic, Lorna, if we have just the time to quickly go through the COVID situation. I mean, it's difficult not to mention COVID in an aviation conference. And what I would like to ask you, colleagues, is whether you feel that the COVID situation, and especially the lockdowns, or the lockdown, if there's only one in your jurisdiction, has made the registration process different, and whether it's helped the digitalization of registries and, help registering aircraft online, with PDFs as opposed to, originals and so on and so forth. So would you say that this process has been helped during this lockdown? For example, Katrina in Malta.
Well, I must say that we're very lucky with our registry, because they are very, very flexible and they do adapt very well. We already had an online system, so we already had everything in place, whereby unless, even if you're registering an idea actually or a mortgage, there's also a way to make it a bit more efficient, even though you need to produce the mortgage deed signed. But when it comes to registration and the normal things, everything was already being done online, so nothing really changed much for us. As far as I know, they're also doing remote audits, not surveys, but audits are being done. We registered a number, I was involved in a number of transactions, even transfer of ownerships and all of that, and everything thankfully went smoothly in the past months.
Excellent. I know, Len, I want to turn to you because I know you have interesting comments about the remote inspection of aircraft. So with people going around the aircraft with the iPhone, is that really how it works? I mean, can you really remotely inspect an aircraft during these times?
Correct. We've had to. Well, again, all regulatory authorities have had to amend their oversight procedures to some extent because of the travel restrictions, and it's worked okay in Bermuda. We do a lot of virtual audits and inspections, and again, most of the inspections is looking at documentation. So you can do that from a distance. If we do need photographs or videos of certain aspects. I think also ICAO has been very much proactive in promoting risk-based oversight. And so this has forced us to move a little quicker towards risk-based oversight where, again, where we have a client, shall we say, that has high standards and we've inspected them and they're always doing a very good job, we'll be inspecting them a lot less, whereas our focus would be more on the very few clients, and generally in the business aviation side, they're all pretty good, but we may do more inspections in those areas. So it's changed, and I don't think it's going to go back to, this is going to be a new normal. I'm not saying we're going to be doing everything virtual, but I think we've demonstrated that we can do it effectively.
Thank you. I think we're right on the hour, Lorna. So
actually, Matthieu, we just got one question here. You may not have seen from Heather Gordon, and we haven't. I don't think we've touched upon this. She said a decade ago, financiers were not so convinced by the benefit of CTC. Do you think that perception has changed with more registries ratifying the CTC? I don't know if anyone has any opinions on that.
Who wants to? I have my view, but who wants to take it? Stephen, go ahead.
I think most financiers at the moment, if the registry is deemed secure in terms of perfecting and protecting the financier's interest, I don't think Cape Town has the effect of effectively vetoing that registry from the transaction. What will be interesting to see is as more jurisdictions ratify Cape Town and the experience of financiers in terms of enforcing using Cape Town continues to grow, whether it will move up the financiers list of priorities. I think financiers learn from every enforcement they take part in, and it might change. So that maybe less so, certainly for the registries here, less so in terms of concerns about the registry itself, but where the aircraft is habitually based and where they end up enforcing. I think that's where Cape Town might become more of a factor in the future.
Yeah, I agree entirely.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Well, I think we probably are up against our time now. I think we've got a minute to go. So well timed, Matthieu. And more importantly, thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Anyway, I want to thank